The fashion models I was interviewing tried to publicly humiliate me. They didn't know I was the one hiring them. I walked onto my brand's casting set pretending to be a hopeful model because I wanted to see what these girls were like to each other. Instantly, the models looked me up and down with contempt, and a girl named Anna immediately announced I must be confused because this wasn't an open call for cheap catalog work. Before I could respond, her friend Krista laughed and said, "Did you seriously show up to cast for Eden Laurent without even getting your roots done? Because that grow-out is giving single mom who gave up." I touched my deliberately unstyled hair and mumbled something about not having time, already shocked at how quickly they'd gone for the jugular. Anna grabbed my portfolio and flipped through the test shots I'd taken with bad lighting on purpose, holding each one up while providing commentary about how my poses looked awful and my angles made my face look like a potato. She asked if I'd learned to model from America's Next Top Model reruns, and Krista snorted, saying, "This is the casting that makes careers. Every girl who's booked Eden Laurent has gone straight to Chanel and Dior, and you thought you could just show up looking like that?" I mentally crossed Anna off my list right then, knowing I'd never let someone this cruel represent my brand. They made me walk for them, and Anna filmed it while narrating like a nature documentary about a baby giraffe learning to use its legs. Krista stepped on the backs of my heels so I'd stumble, then told everyone I couldn't even walk in flats. Another model named Louise joined them saying, "Eden Laurent is launching in every major department store next month with a Times Square billboard. Whoever books this is set for life, and you're here wasting everyone's time." Anna noticed my dress and announced I was wearing Target to an Eden Laurent casting, which was like wearing a garbage bag to the Met Gala. Krista added that Eden had turned down actual supermodels for not being right for her vision, and I had to bite my cheek because I'd never turned down Kara and these girls were just making stuff up. Then they got physical with Anna grabbing my waist and pinching hard while explaining I'd need to lose 15 pounds for runway. Krista lifted my arm and jiggled it, announcing my arm fat would destroy their aesthetic. Louise pushed my shoulders back so hard I almost fell, saying, "This campaign is shooting with Mario Testino in Paris for every fashion magazine in existence, and you can't even stand up straight." The second Krista touched me without permission, she was off my list too. Krista was gesturing wildly when she accidentally spilled her green juice all over my dress, gasping that she was so sorry, but honestly she'd done me a favor because now I had an excuse to leave. Anna offered clothes from her bag, pulling out a dress 3 sizes too small and insisting I try squeezing into it. Louise started listing all the major models who'd worked with Eden before, asking if I really thought I belonged with Gigi and Bella and Kendall when I looked like I should be modeling for grocery store circulars. Anna pulled up Eden's Instagram with its 2 million followers showing the last campaign, saying, "Eden handpicks every single face and she turned down Cara Delevingne last season, but you somehow think you're going to make the cut?" I stared at my own Instagram page on her phone, fighting the urge to tell them right then. They formed a circle and took turns destroying every part of my appearance, from my uneven eyebrows to my chipped nail polish to my legs being too short for editorial. Anna said I had the kind of face that would tank Eden's IPO, and Krista added that putting me in an Eden Laurent dress would be like letting a toddler paint over the Mona Lisa. Then Louise delivered the line that made me bite my lip until it bled. "You don't understand that booking Eden Laurent means never having to work. Again, it's the golden ticket to everything in fashion, and you're here thinking you deserve it when you look like you buy your makeup at CVS." The casting director walked in, and the models immediately transformed into perfect professionals, but she looked past them directly at me, and her face went white as she stammered, "Miss Laurent, I didn't know you were coming in person today." And I stood up from where they'd cornered me, green juice still dripping from my ruined dress, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Actually, I've been here for an hour learning exactly what kind of people we don't want representing our brand." Anna's phone slipped from her frozen fingers and shattered on the floor, while Krista's mouth hung open mid-breath, and Louise's face drained of all color as they stared at me, finally understanding that they'd just destroyed their only chance at the career they'd been dreaming about. But the best part, they still had to cast in front of me, and that was about to be a whole lot of fun. I let the silence stretch out for exactly 3 seconds, while the 3 of them stood there frozen like mannequins in a store window. The casting director started to speak, but I held up my hand and turned to Anna, Krista, and Louise, who were still standing in the exact spots where they'd been tormenting me 60 seconds ago. I picked up the clipboard from the table and clicked my pen open with a sharp snap that made all 3 of them flinch. "Since you're already here, you'll complete your casting walks," I said, keeping my voice perfectly calm and professional. Anna's face went from white to red to white again in the span of 2 heartbeats. Her hands started shaking so hard she dropped her portfolio, and papers scattered across the floor. She bent down to grab them, but her fingers wouldn't work right and she kept missing the pages. Krista tried to help her but knocked over her own bag in the process, sending lipsticks and compacts rolling everywhere. Louise just stood there with her mouth hanging open like she'd forgotten how to close it. The casting director moved toward the door, but I shook my head slightly and she stopped mid-step. "Anna, you're first," I said, pointing to the runway marks on the floor. She looked at the straight line she'd mocked me for struggling with, and her legs started trembling, so badly I could see it through her skinny jeans. She took one step and her ankle rolled in her heel. She caught herself but overcorrected and stumbled to the left. The second step wasn't much better, and by the third she was walking like someone had replaced her kneecaps with jello. She tried to do the pivot turn at the end, but forgot which way to turn and ended up doing this awkward shuffle that looked nothing like the confident strut she'd had 5 minutes ago. I made notes on my clipboard with the same critical expression she'd worn. While filming me, writing things like lacks basic coordination and unable to maintain straight line. She tripped over her own feet twice on the way back, catching herself on the wall the second time. Her face was now the color of a tomato, and sweat was starting to bead on her forehead despite the air conditioning. "Thank you, Anna. Next," I said, without looking up from my notes. Krista stepped forward, but her whole body was shaking like she'd been dunked in ice water. She tried to start her first pose, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling, and it looked less like modeling and more like she was having some kind of medical episode. The green juice stain on my dress caught the studio lights every time she glanced my way, which was every 2 seconds, and each time she looked, she'd lose her concentration and forget what she was doing.